Greetings, Dr. Wolfula here to present a very important special audio presentation that your ears cannot dare unlisten to. Does that make sense? Oh, it doesn't matter. Listen to this.
Welcome to someone's favorite movie. I'm coming to you from the Pod Shack outside beautiful Bay City, Michigan. My name is Randy, and with me is the man, the myth, the legend. I mean, he will wander around an amusement park aimlessly while the Grim Reaper follows him around. His name is Tomko. What's up, sir?
Yeah, but when I'm at the amusement park, just keep the damn kids away from me, please. Do us all a favor.
You can't be around kids if you're an old, you see. You'll get a talking to by some street toughs because old people should not talk to little children. That's just weird.
Is it the talking or is it the offering them peanut butter? That was weird.
Well, it was where he was placing the peanut butter that was weird. Hey. We're just being scallywags. Today we have a great, big, huge episode for you. We're talking about George A. Romero's Lost movie. I say movie in quotations because it's like 53 minutes long. The Amusement Park. And also, by listener request, Fade to Black, a 1980 slasher, I guess. I mean...
Yeah, I'd say it counts.
Yeah. That was requested by our listener of the show, Scott. So thank you for that, sir. We're going to talk all about that. And I don't know. Let's get started with the amusement park, shall we?
We shall.
We shall.
I have to admit, I did not walk into this with the highest of expectations. I just kind of figured it was one of those movies that maybe... usually if a movie that was made in the past, 40, 50 years is considered lost, there's usually a pretty good reason for it, and that reason's usually that it just isn't that good. So I have to admit, I was nicely surprised with this.
I was too. It was... it's very much a Romero movie when you watch it. It's very surreal and nightmarish.
Open to a lot of interpretation.
Yeah. What cracks me up is he filmed this in 1973, and he was apparently hired by the Lutheran Society to do a work-for-hire job and make an educational film about elder abuse and ageism. And instead we get this nightmare of a film. And I'm not sure that it was exactly what they were looking for.
I could see why a church group would have an issue with this because it gets pretty dark in places.
Oh, it gets super dark.
But, I don't even know where to begin approaching this movie because there really isn't much of a plot. It's just kind of like a series of vignettes, you know?
Yeah, it stars Lincoln Mazel from Martin, which we covered on this program with the one and only Dr. Wolfula. It's in the archives, live on live stream for the Cure this year. It stars Lincoln Mazel, and he plays an unnamed old man who goes to the amusement park. And it's almost like he descends into one of the circles of hell because this amusement park is full of other old people who decide to enjoy the day, and they're all getting mistreated in some way, shape, or form. In the way it's filmed, it's very just out of the ordinary. It's not like any other educational film you had to suffer through in high school. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, I'm just imagining mid 1970s high school and middle school children trying to sit through this.
Yeah. I mean, you have you have one scene where an old couple in a bumper car runs into a younger man, and they get into an argument because the younger man says that she doesn't know, the woman couldn't see where she was going, and it's bad enough she's a woman driver but also old. And then a traffic cop shows up to the bumper car area and tries to mediate this argument. And Lincoln Mazel comes up and says, "Well, I witnessed the whole thing. I saw how it was," and then pulls out his glasses. And the younger man pounces on that right away, like, "You weren't even wearing your glasses. How can you know what you saw?" It's full of little weird vignettes like that. Like the Grim Reaper is just chilling out, riding the carousel because old people are around, so he's got to be too, like some sort of grim vulture. Uh,
I kept thinking of early South Park, where you would see the Angel of Death following Kenny on a tricycle.
the Grim Reaper reminded me of William Sadler and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yes, yes.
That's what I thought of. It's just, it's really hard to explain. Other than it's like you said, it's a series of vignettes, and basically the old people are mistreated nonstop throughout this thing.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that this is one of those movies, like a lot of Romero's better movies, where the more you watch it and the more details you pick up on subsequent viewings, the better it's going to get. Because there's an awful lot of symbolism in this movie, and I'm still trying to unpack it 24 hours after having watched it. You know, what exactly was the amusement park supposed to represent? Is it representing life in general? Is it representing the, you know, carrot at the end of the stick that we're promised with retirement? Is it purgatory? What the hell's going on here?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and then you you have that random biker gang that just beats up the main character. You have the young couple that goes in to see the fortune teller to see what it's going to be like when they become older and what their future will be like, and it's just grim and nothing to look forward to whatsoever.
Just goes to show you, live fast, die young, leave a good looking corpse.
Absolutely.
Don't be like Link here.
Don't be like him. I mean, Tomko, you're like 67 years old. You're practically a senior citizen. Did this hit home for you? I mean, God.
Well, in between applications of Ben Gay, it gave me something to think about as far as the way that elders are treated in our society. Um, I think that the disappointing thing is that a lot of the things that they're talking about in this film are still very relevant and very common today. We do tend to dismiss older people as either doddering old bastards who don't know what they're talking about, or we treat them like they're going through a second childhood. You know, they're constantly taken advantage of by vultures that are looking to pilfer their money. The one thing that I thought, and maybe it was talked about in here, but just buried under the language of the film, but I wish that they had talked about the way that family members can take advantage of and abuse their older relatives.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
Unless, I mean, at the very end, when he was sitting down and reading the Three Little Pigs to the little girl, maybe that's what they were talking about, where the parents come and snatch the girl and just leave him laying there alone.
Yeah,
Maybe that little girl is supposed to represent grandchildren.
yeah, that scene was really sad because they take the little girl away and he just breaks down sobbing. He just almost seems like he loses all will to live. That's the thing
Mm-hmm.
about this movie. It's very uncomfortable.
It's a downer.
Yes, it's very it's hard to explain. Like it's so ridiculous and absurd, but also at the same time just disturbing, and it gives you such an odd feeling.
Hmm. I definitely want to go back and rewatch it in a couple months just to kind of see what else I can dig out of this.
Yeah, that and at 53 minutes, it's not going
Yeah,
to.
it's not a big commitment, folks.
No, not at all. It is on Shutter right now and has been since June 8th. And it's probably going to stay there for the foreseeable future, I would guess. I I honestly, this was not what I was expecting. When I heard that George Romero had a lost film that was going to be on Shutter, and it dealt with growing old, and it was called the Amusement Park. I don't know. I thought it was like a haunted amusement park or something. I expected a real, like a more traditional movie with a narrative and plot and characters. Um, I didn't realize at the time that he was hired by a church group to make an educational film. But I do think it's definitely worth seeing, especially for horror fans or Romero fans. I'm not sure why it had been lost for so long, other than I assume that somebody thought that it wasn't worth putting out there. Like,
Well, as soon as I got done watching this, and I have to give all credit where credit's due, I checked out Dr. Wolfula's review of this, and I guess that the Lutherans screened this and they deemed it to be too disturbing for the goals that they were going after, and it was just shelved for almost 50 years.
so did they, some Lutheran sect, have this in their vault somewhere?
I'd imagine it would have to be, and one of the things I really wish accompanied this movie, I mean, it's bookended by the main actor addressing the audience, telling folks that you need to be considerate to the people who are older than you because if you're lucky enough, you'll be like that too. Uh, and he's also talking about how the thing that I find really interesting is that most of the cast was made up of volunteers. I'm pretty sure that only the main character was portrayed by an actual professional actor. The rest of it were just people that were recruited, either by Romero or the Lutheran Church. But I really wish that this had some kind of curated introduction or maybe post log talking about the history of the project, how it got off the ground, more detail about why it wasn't released at the time, where it's been all these years, how it was rediscovered, all of that. I really think it needs some kind of context to put it in. Not maybe not that's not the phrase, but just some kind of history of the movie, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. That would be great if just a small making of documentary or something like that. That would have been great, and maybe it'll
Yeah,
still
just get a
come.
couple talking heads together to let us know exactly what the hell it is we're watching here.
Absolutely. I did see a blog post from uh 2018, so it's been a process to get it where it is today on Shutter. And apparently, at one point, the George A. Romero Foundation on their website was accepting donations to help restore and release the movie. So it had been rediscovered years ago, and it's taken a long road to find a spot for it, I would guess.
Now, I got to give them all the credit in the world. I don't know what the quality of the film was like when they started it out, but it looks fantastic. I mean, obviously, it was made for less than a shoestring budget. You aren't going to have great production value to this, but I'm imagining that when they started out with this, it probably was grainy as hell. It was all scratched and beat to hell and back. It looks really good.
Yeah, I'm amazed what the restoration process is and the things that studios and organizations can do to restore movies these days. Because you can watch any movie from the 80s these days, practically all of them, on any of the streaming services. If you have uh, an HD cable and an HD TV, it looks brand new. Like it's amazing the technology and the efforts that uh, that are given to movies today these days to restore them to look amazing.
Yeah, I mean, even everyday run-of-the-mill programming. I mean, have you ever gone back and looked at what the video quality was like for VHS?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's bad.
Especially, the home dubbed ones where you would record over it constantly. And I mean, the strides that have been made is just amazing.
Yeah,
And
it's like the images on screen, and then somebody licked their thumb and just rubbed it all over the image. That's what a VHS tape looks like.
hey, we loved it back in the day.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I don't know what else to say about this. I mean, it's definitely worth checking out. It just kind of makes me wonder, what else we might finally get to see. It's like, I'm assuming that you're familiar with the concept of lost media.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not too long ago, we had the Orson Welles film that was lost, The Other Side of the Wind, that was
I still
fine.
have to see that.
Yeah, me too. It was released on Netflix. I mean, there's all sorts of who knows what's out there, really.
Well, I mean, there are some quote unquote holy grails. The one that I really hope to see one day is an unreleased Jerry Lewis movie.
That's the one I was just going to bring up. I'm glad you
Yep.
did.
Isn't it
Yeah.
called the Clown That Cried or something like that?
Something like that. Something with a clown and crying. It's probably the clown that cried. Oh, I can look it up. Yeah. Tell the people what it's presumably about.
Essentially, it takes place, I want to say, in Germany during the early years of World War II. Jerry Lewis plays a very famous clown who gets into trouble for making fun of the Führer. And he gets locked into a concentration camp. And I'm not sure if he is a persecuted minority or if he's just a political prisoner. But to work off his sentence, he is tasked with the stormtroopers and the SS guards to entertain the children that are in the concentration camps, up to and including making them laugh and sing while he's marching them into the gas chambers.
Yeah.
And every account that I've heard of this, because I think it's Harry Shearer who played I want to say, bass player in Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
He, I guess, has seen this movie, and he said that as wrong as you imagine this movie being subject-wise, it's so much worse. And I guess the main reason why it didn't come out was because of financing and producers wanting to have distribution rights for different sections of the world. And it's mostly edited and has been sitting in Jerry Lewis's vault for the past 45 to 50 years. And he said that he would never allow it to be released while he is alive. And unfortunately, Jerry Lewis has passed into the great beyond. And I guess shortly after he passed away, his estate gave a copy of it to the Library of Congress with instructions to release it in X amount of years.
Yeah, it's called The Day the Clown Cried.
Yes.
He did a incomplete copy of the film was donated to the Library of Congress in 2015 under the stipulation that it not be screened before June 2024.
Okay.
So it's coming up.
All right, Netflix, get your lawyers in action. I want to see this damn thing. And I guess for a long time, like A and B list comedians out in LA would have script readings of it.
Yeah, I feel like Patton Oswalt had a whole thing where he rented
Yes.
out a theater and did that with a bunch of famous people.
And he and everybody else involved got cease and desist orders directly from Jerry Lewis himself. There are like a bunch of unreleased albums that are still sitting in record companies' vaults and by a lot of like big name artists. Like Neil Young has just tons of unreleased material. Prince, his vault is legendary. Uh, Movie wise, I'm trying to think of what else there could be. I know that I think it's called London by Night. It's like one of the first major Hollywood vampire movies starring Lon Chaney.
Ooh.
Uh, if I showed you a still from it, you would recognize it immediately. But all the copies have been lost because if you've watched what is it, The Inglorious Bastards, you would know that the early years of Hollywood, everything was filmed on extremely flammable material.
Yep.
And sure enough, fires broke out at studios left and right. And I guess something like 75% of the movies made before the 40s are just gone.
Yeah, that's sad. That's a shame.
Um, that and the other, I'd say that probably maybe I would argue probably at this point the most famous pieces of lost material are early episodes of Doctor Who.
Damn it, I was just gonna say that too. We're like one mind.
Because back in the day, I mean, nobody thought there was going to be any kind of value to be had from entertainment once it was past first run. And everything was filmed on videotape. And back in the 60s, videotape was expensive as fuck.
Yeah.
And the great thing about it, like we mentioned, you could erase it and re-record over it. So you'll have all kinds of old television shows that are just completely lost. Things like Doctor Who, early episodes of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Well, shit, the actual real first generation footage of the moon landing is lost.
Yeah. Yeah, the sad thing is like a lot of that Doctor Who stuff. I mean, the BBC thought we'll just tape over it, or we'll just wipe it out and reuse the tape, or we'll just destroy it, and so we can make rooms on our
Yeah, 5
shelves.
years from now, no one's going to be interested in this shit.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they've been able to piece together some things, but a as much of a rabid fan base that Doctor Who has, and I admit I've fallen into the Doctor Who trap for a while. I've fallen back out of it, but I'm really interested in the vast history of it. I guess that's one of the things that appeals to me. But I mean,
Well, the thing that always fascinates me about these things that are eventually found, like the Doctor Who stuff, they're found in the weirdest places.
th-
Like they're found in the jungles of some small uh part, like the British Empire had a base down in New Guinea or something like that, and they sent tapes down for their soldiers to watch, and they just never got sent back.
yeah. So as far as Doctor Who goes, like during the 60s there was 253 episodes filmed and only 156 of those even exist today. That would be like eliminating half of Seinfeld and being
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we just taped over it for Mad About You." So, sorry.
Well, I mean, the only reason why shows like Star Trek are still available and also why they look as good as they do today is because they actually were recorded on film. And you
Yeah.
can't erase that.
Right. One of the big hallmarks of the Doctor Who series, and one of the most clever things about it, is they discovered early on they could find a way to recast the show and keep it going indefinitely by having their main character be able to regenerate when he's dying. They were able to cast a new actor, let the previous actor go about his business to do other things, and continue the show. One of the most sought after lost episodes of Doctor Who is when the original Doctor, William Hartnell, regenerates into the second Doctor. That is completely lost. There's just a few clips. There's like 27 seconds that have been found of that regeneration. Uh, it's really a shame. I mean,
Hmm.
that's a big part of the Doctor Who history, and it's just missing. And who knows if it'll ever exist?
Well, I mean, I've been collecting bootleg videos and music for 20 odd years. And if I've learned anything about that hobby, it's that every time you think that there's no way anything quote unquote new could possibly be discovered, something just falls out of the sky.
Oh yeah,
So
that's true.
who knows?
Yeah, usually if you look hard enough, like
Hmm.
like in the early 2000s, like when file sharing was a big deal, I was obsessed with finding really obscure live music, and I
Hmm.
and I heard rumors that there existed the boss Bruce Springsteen covering the mulleted one, Billy Ray Cyrus, "Achy Breaky Heart." I'm like, that cannot exist. How could that possibly exist? And I searched and I searched and I searched, and by God, I finally found it. And it really didn't deliver on the hype, but I was happy that it was there.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I just think I more remember the things that were genuinely mind blowing as opposed to the stuff where it's like, okay, yeah, that could have remained lost.
Yeah, I, well, I guess that's why I have this we have this podcast, why I created this podcast, because I'm obsessed with obscure, weird media that probably shouldn't exist, but somehow does.
Yes. All right. So, do we want to move on to Fade to Black?
We should, because that was a long, entertaining, I think, tangent, but a long tangent.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fade to Black. This is the listener request that we got from Mr. Scott Swanson. Thank you, sir, for listening and requesting
Thank you.
this. Yes. Fade to Black is a 1980s slasher. It's from the year 1980. It was made on a budget of 1.8 million. It made 15 million at the box office, believe it or not.
Nice.
Yeah, this was a movie actually I wanted to cover last October, Tomco, for Halloween. And again, we were just talking about finding obscure media, and that's what this podcast is about, kind of. And this is a movie that I read about somewhere. I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. So I tried to find it everywhere, and I went on a relentless search. Finally, I found it. And the moment I found it, and I was going to say, we should do this, it was announced it was going to be on Shudder the very next month. And I got so pissed off. I'm like, no, no, all that hard work for nothing. Damn you, Shudder. Damn you.
Why are you so good to me, Shudder?
Shudder is an embarrassment of riches for horror fans.
It really, really is. Yeah.
They consistently have some of the best new horror out there, and they also rescue the weird, obscure stuff too. So, I mean, it's a great thing to have if you're a horror fan of any sort.
Now, I had just recently heard of this movie the first time, again through Shudder, by watching that two-part mega documentary called "In Search of Darkness,"
Oh yeah, yeah.
where they just go through and talk about all kinds of iconic and not so iconic horror movies from the 1980s, and this was one of the ones that came up. And I just kind of filed it away in the back of my head until, we get that request from Mr. Swanson, and just the light bulb popped off. It's like, okay, yeah, I was looking for an excuse to watch that movie. Let's do it.
Yeah. If you're a horror movie fan, by the way, you need to watch In Search of Darkness. It's really good. There's also a sequel now, In Search of Darkness 2. It's equally as long. It's like another 4 hours. I haven't watched it yet, but I know it's there on Shudder. So
It's one of those things where, sit down and make sure that you're, going to be in a comfortable chair where your ass isn't going to go numb, because you're going to be there for a while. but it does not feel like a 4-hour long program.
No, not at all. It's very entertaining. Okay, Fade to Black stars Dennis Christopher as a title character, Eric Binford. And if you didn't know better, you would think you were watching Jesse Eisenberg on the screen, at least in looks, if not by voice. I mean, that's who he reminds me of, Jesse Eisenberg. He plays the title character, Eric Binford, who is a extreme movie nut. He's obsessed. He's quoting lines. He's tossing out trivia. He's making bets on movie trivia. It's his entire life, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that the writer and director of this movie is a big time movie geek. You know, this was clearly made from a place of love, but I think it was also made during a time where fan communities didn't really have a way to congregate together. So I'm old enough to remember where you didn't have anybody to talk about the latest rediscovered George Romero movie or the restored cut of a Sergio Leone movie. You're not going to find anybody like that in small town America. So you're going to kind of stick out, especially if you're in a group of people that are hyper masculine like this guy is.
Yeah, he lives with his aunt, which it's later revealed she's something other than his aunt. And he works at some, I don't know, some film stock place, I would say, some warehouse, I guess.
They said it was an ad agency. And I know that he was supposed to deliver commercials to various television stations, but to me, it looked like it was a film processing center.
That's what it looked like to me, too, just because there was just vast rows of film in canisters. But whatever. He kind of is friendless, he's bullied by his coworkers, he's bullied by his aunt. His aunt, by the way, his aunt Stella was played by Eve Brent Ash, who actually played Jane in one of the Tarzan movies, believe it or not.
Really? Because I thought she was kind of miscast. I mean, she did not look old enough to be his elderly aunt.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. She really does not look. I would assume you would want somebody older looking and more cantankerous in that role, but I don't know. That's where
I mean, it just looked like they threw on a wig and a bunch of pancake makeup on her and said, good enough.
Yeah. By the way, it should be mentioned that one of the bullies that picks on Eric at work is named Richie, played by Mickey Rourke. Yes, that Mickey Rourke. Believe it or not. Pre-plastic surgery, early 80s handsome Mickey Rourke.
Yeah, full of promise and not cocaine.
Yes. He doesn't look like he's been punched in the face yet. He's still probably naive, and I don't know. But I'm not sure this is his first movie. It's got to be close, though, I would say.
It has to be.
Yeah. One day, young Eric is out at a diner and sees the lovely Marilyn, who looks exactly like Marilyn Monroe, which immediately piques his interest because, well, she's super hot. And also, she looks like Marilyn Monroe, and he's a movie geek. And the actress who plays Marilyn in the movie was actually a Marilyn Monroe impersonator from Australia, Linda Carriage.
I could see that.
Yeah, she had a very brief career and a lot of B movies. She was in Surf 2 and Vicious Lips and Alien.
Oh, man, she wasn't even in Surf 1?
No, she wasn't. She was in Surf 2. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, don't worry about that, Tomko. We're covering Surf 2 pretty soon. So she was even in Alien from LA.
Really? Now, when you mean alien, are you talking about like an illegal alien or like a UFO elf alien?
No, I'm talking about Kathy Ireland starring in a made-for-TV movie called Alien from L.A.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Well, depend on your point of view. I mean, if all aliens looked like Kathy Ireland circa 1988, the world would be a better place. We wouldn't have to even care about UFO reports from the government.
I have a feeling that we'd care a lot more, actually, sir.
You think so?
I think so.
Why?
If you knew that you had a chance of looking up in the sky and seeing a young Kathy Ireland, I think you'd be keeping real close attention to what was coming out of Washington.
Oh,
I know I would.
I guess you have a point. What else do we have? So he sees Marilyn at the diner and half-ass asks her out. He's the weirdest, creepiest dude when he does it. Somehow lands a date, and then everything goes wrong.
Now, I don't think that this young lady was necessarily charmed by his advances toward her as much as she just wanted to piss off her friend.
It kind of seemed that way, especially since she double books a date that night and
Mm-hmm.
basically ghosts him, which sends him on a spiral, which sets off the rest of the movie.
Now, I kind of got the same impression for this movie as I did the amusement park, in that there's a loose structure to this movie. There's a little bit of plot, but it's mainly just set pieces in vignettes. I
Yeah,
mean, you got this guy who is dressing up as characters from famous movies and recreating the scenes, but I don't know. I liked this movie, but it's kind of easy to pull the strings and unravel it. You know what I mean?
sure. Uh, yeah, that's kind of the gimmick of the movie. I mean, when you phrase it that way, it does seem like a series of vignettes too. But the gimmick
And
of
don't
the
get me wrong, they were very, very well shot, and you know, it kept my attention. But my main problem with this movie is if I don't really like the character, I can't get invested in their story or what happens to them. I really did not find this guy sympathetic in the least.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, he's not kind of a creep, he's downright creepy.
yeah, he's super creepy. Uh, I guess that's kind of unique because it could be considered a slasher movie, and the gimmick is that he dresses up as various characters from the movies he worships and
Mhm.
kills people, sometimes intentionally, sometimes inadvertently, it seems.
I will give the movie all kinds of credit though, because up until that point, this was the start of the masked slasher craze. You didn't really know a whole lot of the backstory about the characters that were killing the people. You didn't know what was motivating them. It's like watching the first Halloween, other than escaping from the institution, what's Michael Myers' motive in that movie?
Yeah, you don't know.
Exactly. Whereas this movie, you know who the character is, you know what he's trying to achieve. So kudos.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Get out of my head again, damn it, Tommy. That's why it's kind of unique. The the killer, the slasher, if you will, is actually the protagonist. He's the guy we follow throughout the entire movie. Um, I don't know that he even deserves any sympathy, other than
Well, they kind of set it up to where they want you to root for him in some points, where he's being bullied by his coworkers, where he's being harangued by his aunt, where he just can't get the right words out to connect with that special girl. I think they want you to sympathize with him, but he's just such an unlikable character.
yeah. There's this movie. really fully embraces the fact that he's a movie geek, not only in his characters, but I mean, there's posters for Halloween and Tourist Trap featured prominently in one scene.
Yeah, there's no way you could do that these days
No,
because there's also scenes and audio from various movies that were released by various studios. And I don't think those studios got paid.
yeah, he somehow somehow they got away with featuring clips from Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Hmm.
Like I don't know how that happened.
Well, that and I think the movie's Little Caesar
Yeah,
with Cagney.
yeah.
They had audio from the original Halloween.
Yeah. In one scene, there's a prominent picture of Christopher Reeve as Superman.
Hmm.
Uh, it's there is a really, really blatant attempt to homage Psycho at one point.
I actually thought that was clever.
It
It,
was clever, but when you realize what they were trying to do beforehand, it makes a lot more sense. So Eric actually goes to a midnight screening of Night of the Living Dead, and which is also featured in clips, which it could be because it was in public domain instantly. Because damn it, George A. Romero, there's a connection between the two. He kind
there
of
you go.
fucked up when he went to file copyright.
Oops.
Oopsie poo poo. But anyways, Eric dresses up as Count Dracula, which that scene before that when he's putting on the makeup, pretty iconic.
Yeah.
Uh, he attends a midnight screening of Night of the Living Dead, and then he breaks into Marilyn's house, which how he found her address, who knows? And she's in the shower, and you think he's going to kill her or something, but instead he drops a pen and screams that he was just looking for an autograph and runs away, and the ink from the pen swirls around in the water and stuff. It's really kind of clever, as Tomko said. But
It's clever, but do you ever see a Mel Brooks movie called High Anxiety?
absolutely, that one's a lot better.
Where they did the same thing where instead of the blood swirling down the drain, it's ink.
I bought a used copy of High Anxiety from a used bookstore like 3 months ago. I was so excited to find it.
It's, I mean, at least that one gag is exactly the same.
Yeah. But apparently I heard they couldn't get the rights to Psycho. They wanted to have him at a midnight screening of Psycho. But for some reason they couldn't clear those rights.
Huh.
So which is funny because Universal distributed Psycho. Universal also obviously distributed Creature from the Black Lagoon. So I don't know how that works. But they weren't able to get those rights, but still stuck that scene in there anyways. But it would have been much better if he had been at a Psycho screening, I think.
Now, one thing I got to give credit for is immediately after that scene, when he is basically bumping into Marilyn's friend while still dressed as the Count, the lighting and the cinematography in that sequence was really, really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of good shots in this movie. There's that scene after he pushes his Aunt Stella, who's in a wheelchair, down the stairs. He's reenacting a scene from one of his favorite movies, Kiss of Death, where the protagonist shoves a woman down the stairs who's in a wheelchair. Right after that, he's looking at himself in the mirror, but there's also another mirror, like a magnifying glass mirror, right next to that. And so his face is completely distorted in that mirror as he's looking at his own face in the regular mirror. It's really effective and weird, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing that I thought was kind of funny was the section of the film where he's dealing with the producer. He's basically picked up hitchhiking, and he finds out that the guy who's behind the wheel is a big shot in the movie industry,
Yeah.
and he pitches him the idea for what was it, a horror movie?
Yeah, it sounded like some sort of horror movie. Yeah.
And the producer's like, "Oh, well, that's a good idea. Get with my office and we'll see what we can do." Next thing you know, he is excited because he's finally going to strike it rich in Hollywood. He's going to be able to actually make movies instead of just watching them. And he flips on the television, and there's a talk show with the producer. And the host asks, "Well, what do you have coming down the pike?" And lo and behold, he is basically pitching his movie to the audience. The producer is. He stole the idea without any kind of credit. I have a feeling that I don't have anything to back this up, but I have a feeling that at least somebody who worked on this movie had that exact scenario happen in real life, because that seems just too damn plausible.
Yeah. The movie in question was going to be called Alabama and the 40 Thieves. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Immediately made me think of Tarantino.
Yeah. Right.
Because he had a character name of Alabama who was a good little thief.
Mm-hmm. Quick sidebar: I purchased from Amazon the paperback copy of Quentin Tarantino's debut as a novelist. He wrote Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as a novel, which is allegedly completely different than the movie. So I'm excited to dig into that. It just came out this week. I will pass along my findings as they become more.
I'm eager to hear
Clear.
what you think about that, because I thought that that was actually one of his better movies.
I agree. I like the movie quite a bit. When I
Mhm.
heard he was writing a book, I was instantly intrigued. When he decided to make it sort of a hard-boiled paperback, I was also intrigued. He instead of going the hardcover route and all this ebook stuff, and he was like, "I'm going to release it as a mass market paperback for $8."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's what it cost me, $8 on Amazon, and I got it. It looks like an old school paperback from like 1979. It's great.
Please tell me the edges of the pages are yellowed.
They're not, but that would have been an
Oh,
amazing touch. That would have been great. The also the cover and stuff is like a little too perfect. I would have liked if there was like, I don't know, some imperfections
random
printed on it.
creases on the cover.
Yeah, that would have been cool, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So, yeah, that's my brief sidebar.
It was worth it. I'm looking forward to your report, sir.
Yeah, I can't wait to dig into it. So he dresses up, as I said before, in various different costumes. He dresses up like Dracula. He dresses up like the Mummy. He dresses
Which
up,
I thought was actually a very, very well done mummy.
yeah, that looked pretty cool. He dresses up as a gangster, Cody Jarrett, near the end of the movie. He also dresses up like Hopalong Cassidy, which is to me is disturbing as fuck. The weird mask that he wears as Hopalong Cassidy.
He looks like a demented Woody from Toy Story.
Yes, yes. It's very effective. This is what he decides to wear to take out Mickey Rourke's character. Yeah, I can't imagine any movie studio clearing those Hopalong Cassidy. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I read that that character and those scenes from the Hopalong Cassidy movies got him in a bit of hot water because apparently the filmmakers didn't get the proper authorization to use those film clips from the Hopalong Cassidy
Are you
movies.
saying that the rights holders took issue with their main piece of intellectual property being used as an instrument of death?
For some reason, yeah, they didn't take kindly to that. I don't know why, but
Go figure.
yeah, right. Yeah, it would be taking like Mr. Spock and having him slice somebody's head off with a machete. That's basically the same thing. Like,
Oh, damn it. Now I want to see that.
I kind of do too, quite honestly. But I mean, Hopalong Cassidy was a big time character in the 30s and 40s. So, I mean, it's along the same lines, I would think.
Yeah. Uh, and the other thing I thought was really interesting was particularly in the Dracula and Hopalong Cassidy, the way that the makeup was portrayed and the way that the lighting was set up. And you also get this to an extent with the mummy scene, but it looked like it was a black and white movie in some shots.
Oh yeah, I thought that was really apparent in the Dracula scenes when he was dressed up like
Hmm.
Dracula. He chases a hooker that he tried to proposition earlier after his date with Marilyn didn't happen. He just randomly runs into that hooker after the screening of Night of the Living Dead, and she's running from him and trips and falls and accidentally impales herself on a picket fence. And
It
that,
happens.
I mean, I've done it a few times. I don't know about you, but I mean, clumsy, clumsy, clumsy. But
Now, I kind of wonder if Frank Miller saw this movie and took inspiration
oh,
because the only real prominent color in that sequence was her red blouse. Everything else had a black and white appearance to it.
sure, that's interesting. I mean, it wouldn't be that far fetched.
No.
That's getting into his prime as a creator. I mean, he was about to go on a tear unlike any other there in the mid '80s. So maybe so.
So one little bit of trivia that I just kind of was wondering about is when exactly the movie was released, because it's the story of an obsessive fan who turns his obsession into, you know, something that has deadly consequences. And I guess it was released about a month and a half before John Lennon was killed by a fan.
It was released on October 17th, 1980. You would know more than anyone because you're a huge Beatles fan. When was John Lennon shot?
December 8th, 1980.
Okay, so pretty close.
Yeah. I'm wondering, I mean, they've had plenty of movies since this, but I wonder if this was the first movie that dealt with obsessive fans becoming deadly.
It probably. I know right afterwards there was the movie The Fan in like 1981. And that was kind of controversial. It's about a record salesman who's a big, huge fan of an actress and tries to take out her and all her loved ones after she rejects his advances through love letters.
That's how you woo a lady.
I mean, you got to try everything you can. If they say no, you just persist because obviously that's the way. No, don't do that.
No,
Don't do that.
that's not what Dr. Penrose meant when he said shoot your shot.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Dr. Penrose. Uh, yeah, and the movie The Fan really got a lot of media attention because of that. It was released right after the murder of John Lennon, and that and obsessive fans. Yeah, it didn't go over that well. Needless to say.
Again, who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, right. What did you think overall about Fade to Black?
I think it was good. I think it was more style over substance. It had a lot of really great elements, but I don't know if those elements added up to a great whole.
Yeah. We should mention there's an entire subplot with a psychologist, a criminal psychologist, along the lines of a Dr. Loomis in Halloween.
With a magnificent mustache, I may add.
It's pretty epic, and you know it's epic because he woos the hot young police officer woman instantly. She sees that mustache, and boy, does she swoon. So there's also that subplot. They are kind of. I appreciated the character work with them. Actually, I was like,
I did, but at the other hand, I mean, there were scenes where it's like, okay, do you really need to have a 3-minute sequence of this guy jamming on a harmonica?
yeah, that's the thing. I appreciated the character work, but it almost seemed like they were in another movie completely. It looks like their scenes really had nothing to do with what was going on. It was weird like that.
That, and I mean, the scene where he confronts the fan and the fan gets the drop on him, shoots him in the leg, and that's not a big deal. His big thing is, oh man, my leg really hurts. And rather than chasing after the guy who is holding this young woman hostage, they just walk out the goddamn door.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a police officer. I don't want to make myself sound like an expert in law enforcement, but I'm pretty sure that's not how it's done.
I don't think so. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's not how it's done.
Um, I'm trying to think of what else I can really say about this movie without, because again, Mr. Swanson, I liked it. I did. I know it sounds like I'm shitting on it, but I did like this movie. Uh, I think that it is just a really cool looking movie. I think it's one of those, maybe one of the very first mainstream movies that you could tell was made by a movie geek for other movie geeks.
Yeah. And I will say in 1980 you were about to get just assaulted by a barrage of slasher movies.
Mm-hmm.
And at least this one stands out and has its own thing going. Nobody really repeated this that I'm aware of. The whole conceit of dressing up like other movie characters or whatever. It's very unique in the 80s slasher genre, I will say that.
Definitely worth checking out. I had a real good time with it.
Yep, it is on Shudder. It is available through Vinegar Syndrome, that wonderful company that loves to rescue all the obscure cinema. It's available through Vinegar Syndrome on a Blu-ray. Usually they pack their stuff with a boatload of extra features and whatnot. So check that out if you're really interested.
I I would be kind of curious to see what behind the scenes extras they have on this.
Okay, buy me the Blu-ray
Yeah.
and I'll tell you.
Fair enough.
Tom, go tell people where folks can find you.
You can find me on a little show called Jake and Tom Conquer the World. It has been described as the conversations that you would overhear over at the other end of the bar among two drunken dorks talking about everything from comic books, movies, television shows, to weird news stories involving poop. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, you'll find us just sitting in the corner making people uncomfortable. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at The Drunken Dork and on Facebook at Jake and Tom Conquer the Group. Randy, what about you, sir?
You can find me on a big dumb comedy show called Miserable Retail Slave. We recently celebrated our 9th anniversary and we're still kind of going strong.
Still kicking along.
Still kicking along. We're back to releasing episodes on a regular basis. It's a show about our lives and the weird observations that comes with it. You'll probably laugh. You know, it's fun. We've gotten back to having guests on, so I think we're going to do that all summer. We're also, me and my co-host Tommy are going to make a very rare appearance together on another podcast. We never do this. I think this might be the first time that both of us have been on a different podcast, but we're going to be appearing on.
Well, no, I was going to say there was the live stream for the Cure Trainwreck.
Well, yeah, I mean, the live stream for The Cure, yeah, we've done that, but we don't talk about that most years. Year one was really good. The rest of the years, oh my God, whatever. We're going to be appearing on the Bumwine Bob podcast. It'll be fun, I think. We're going to have a good time, so that's a thing to look out for. Also, I have a third podcast coming out soonish. So that's another thing to, because I hate free time, Tomko. I just hate
I
it.
guess.
Yeah. So what are we gonna do next week? Usually we have an announcement for the folks for next week. You got a movie in mind? I can't even talk.
You sound like, well, you can talk just fine if you have a cleft palate.
Right. Do you have a movie at the tip of your tongue, at the top of your head that you want to cover? I'm leaving
you know
it to
what
you.
we could do? I followed the advice of the good doctor, and I got myself a copy of Cutters, A Love Story.
Fine. Next week we're doing Wrist Cutters, A Love Story, one of Dr. Wolfila's favorite movies of all time. We're doing it next week. It's going to be fun, right?
It's going to be loads of fun.
You didn't sound very convincing there, huh?
Well, there's only so much fun you can have in a movie about suicide, let's be honest.
Yeah, I guess so. Coming up this summer, we're going to be doing a lot of summer-related movies. It's going to get real hot and steamy, Tomko. You excited about that? We're definitely
had me at steamy.
We're doing Surf 2. It's happening.
Oh, God. I have that. I deserve that. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing Surf 2. It is coming. I actually bought the Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome.
No.
Oh, yes. It's happening. It is
all
happening.
right. I'm looking forward to this.
All right. We're going to do Wrist Cutters, A Love Story, followed by Surf 2, and later in the month, Cruel Jaws.
Oh, I've never heard of that, but I love the title.
Yes. I hope you love the movie, too. It's something to watch.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
All right. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
See ya.